Welcome back. The Pentagon says its new AI strategy and its work on 6G networks are two key elements of moving everything it can to the edge. Security is another priority military leaders have listed as more data and compute power is available at the edge. Adam Toys, Chief Technology Officer at Rancher Government Solutions. I want to pull back on that concept to begin with. What is the edge anyway in 2026? The way that the military is working today, Adam?
Well, first, thanks for having me today. You know, that's one of my favorite questions to answer. The edge is holistically subjective, but there still is this push across the department, the IC, civilian agencies, even commercial, towards moving towards the edge. And that's kind of the perfect storm of capability meets necessity. And from a capability perspective, compute keeps getting denser, smaller, less power constraints. And then beyond that, you have the ability to run GPUs, even in tactical edge deployments. But equally as important to that is the necessity. As technology advances, cyber warfare advances, the luxury of having connectivity to the outside world, whether that be a local data center or especially the cloud, that luxury doesn't even exist anymore. It's not even a reality. So we're seeing more and more often that mission critical workloads are pushing further and further out to the edge, specifically in the hands of the warfighter. So the further you can get out there, the more secure and capable you're going to be.
Is everybody's edge the same edge? It seems to me that when I talk to folks in one branch, especially military folks, but you're right, civilian agencies are talking more about the edge than they ever have. But when I talk to folks in one branch, it sounds different. And that's me reading between the lines, but it sounds different than it does when I talk to somebody in another
absolutely.
service.
The edge by design is completely subjective. You can ask 10 people who work an edge every single day what they think the edge is, and you're going to get 10 different accurate answers. And what works for SATCOM might not necessarily work for an aircraft carrier, might not work for a tactical edge kit, might not work for a wearable technology that a soldier's wearing. But beyond the heterogeneity of those environments, the one thing that's not spoken about a lot is also kind of the technical requirements that it takes when you're working in all these disparate locations. How do you actually administer and manage and maintain all these different workflows? And that's something we at Rancher Government are really trying to solve, that I like to call kind of that last mile problem.
So there are two things that I'm hearing more and more from these leaders that we're talking about that are trying to deliver what we've discussed so far. One is, how do they get information from edge point to edge point instead of from edge point back to HQ and then back out to another edge point? The other one is, how do you do this in a DDIL environment? Those are the two big things that it sounds like folks are looking for the next generation in. What's your sense of what that looks like moving forward?
That's absolutely correct. I'd say about 80 to 90% of our customers work in some form of an air-gapped environment. That's becoming far and more often, the rule as opposed to the exception. Mm-hmm. And even in the commercial space, you see a lot of folks moving towards building for the air gap and working back towards a connected environment. For us, the focus around that, those DDoS environments, is making sure that we can simplify that deployment model. How do you make it that an enlisted soldier who doesn't have the technical, nor should have the technical acumen to actually bootstrap a device and put a mission critical application workload onto something, has a secured open platform to deploy this software on top of it without having to have a technical asset on the ground.
Mm-hmm. You bring up a great point too, which is this technology has to be available to people who by their nature should not be technology people, don't have to be. That's where we were for a long time. They don't have to be. Now it's that mentality of they should not be. This should be so simple and user intuitive.
Exactly, but that is one of the challenges of the edge, right? You have built-in complexity to it. So, and this is one of the kind of, forward progresses of software development, where software has really evolved in that far more can be put back to the platform as opposed to the application workload itself. So kind of what we're targeting is, how do we simplify that deployment model? How do we provide a platform so our customers can build soup to nuts their infrastructure to their mission critical application workload with a zero touch installation, as an example, where an E3 or somebody out in the field can literally plug in a USB stick, hit the power button, and magically their mission critical application is online.
What are the security implications for all of this?
Absolutely. Security is, just as important as the mission critical application itself. It's important to be baseline off of secured iterations. And that's why when you build this platform, we've kind of put it together, we've built it on top of our standards and our products that were already built up to federal standards to include STIG hardened implementations and all those things. So essentially there's already built-in reciprocity that when that mission application workload is running, the application developer only needs to worry about their application security. And all the other things that go with that in terms of the operating system, the platform itself, and all those iterations between those are all kind of taken care of.
A final thought. We've talked about this from primarily a military perspective, a Pentagon perspective. But as I said, and you alluded to the fact, even commercial organizations now, I hear from civilian agencies all the time talking about the edge, whether that's workers in the field or whatever. Does that look different in that kind of environment than it does in a Defense Department environment?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it certainly does. And it really just depends because, like I said before, the edge, depending on who you talk to, is completely different. And we have customers today who treat a data center as the edge because technically it's disconnected, right? So it really just depends. But the fact of the matter is, if you're designing your platform the right way, it shouldn't really matter what you define the edge as. It should just be flexible enough and built on those open standards to really provide the flexibility that whether it's a civilian agency deploying to a localized data center versus wearable technology on a soldier, it should still be, from the application developer's perspective, the simplicity that's at the platform level.
Adam, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
Greatly appreciate it.
You can read more about everything Adam and I talked about on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the numbers game ahead for agencies. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. We'll be right back.